Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Partnership Guys, episode 5, the Partnership Guys podcast. We're really excited to come to you again. Thank you all for listening, and please like us and share us and get the word out about all the important things we're talking about here. So again, I'm Rob Stolker. I got Steven Schneider, Todd Leonardis here with me, and today we are talking about managing conflict before it manages you. You know, this is a partnership and there is going to be conflict as a business, and there's going to be plenty of different things that, you know, as a leader, as an owner of a business that, you know, that you go through, and managing how you handle your disagreements, super important for sure. So Todd, Steven,
I think the
any
key
initial
thing with
thoughts
managing conflict is really about just making sure it doesn't get out of control. You want to be able to address issues when they're small issues. And if you don't, they end up becoming bigger issues. The last thing you want is a big elephant in the room. So having systems in place in the partnership that allow you to address that issue or address that conflict is critical to be able to make sure that they don't become problems in the partnership and ultimately in the business.
Most conflict, certainly in my experience, have been molehills that could have been knocked down pretty easily and pretty early before they turned into mountains. And it's really about addressing it early, quickly, respectfully, of course, but understanding that they're going to happen, and avoidance is what grows them into those mountains that then almost can sometimes become unmovable objects.
Yeah, so that's leads me into talking about early warning signs, which for me, when I went through my 10-year lawsuit with my neighbor, and again, looking back on it all, there were so many different red flags and warnings about how we were handling things that we disagree about. When you have good partners, like, the three of us are, and all the partnerships I've had and the partnership that you guys have, the disagreements lead to healthy conversations. And it was pretty clear early on with my neighbor and I that disagreements I was wrong, that I needed to see things his way, or else we were going to have issues, and huge red flag from the beginning.
I think a way to kind of recognize when you're ignoring a problem is when you talk to your partner and you kind of finish the conversation and walk away and you're just shaking your head like, I can't believe he said that, or I can't believe he's doing this, or I can't believe whatever. And that's a huge red flag and a warning sign to turn around and say, wait a second, I got a problem here. Let's talk this through, because it's a lot easier to deal with that issue at that moment in time than to wait for it to become a bigger issue. And before you know it, you're screaming and yelling at each other, and it's a problem that you just can't solve, because now it's an emotional problem.
And you're pretty much screaming about a bigger issue at that point because you didn't address it when it was smaller, right? So now it is a problem. Ignoring the small issues is, in my opinion, more dangerous than just having the disagreement, the argument, the fight, whatever you want to call it, when it's a smaller issue. All right, because you start to then, as things get bigger, you start to kind of spin up and start pulling in other baggage into that, and then that's when it just becomes a very unproductive fight that will ultimately degrade more than help.
I'm by nature a conflict avoider. I don't like conflict. I don't like to get into conflict with people. I don't like to bring it up, but I've learned in some cases the hard way that you have to. You just have to be able to put the issue out on the table and be comfortable with having a difficult conversation. And sometimes they are pretty difficult, but it's a hell of a lot less difficult than when you've got 10 problems that are now really pretty much unrelated, that's all become one gigantic tornado of a problem. That's a lot more difficult to deal with.
Which is my partnership's failing. Like, that's ultimately, or my business is failing. That's where that kind of spins up to. And where, almost a capstone on just having all of these little fights or all these little disagreements. And as I say, as they grow, you have that capstone of just dissolution, just departnering.
Yeah, the other thing is the flip side of talking it out is in holding it in is it's easy. It's the easy thing to do. The easy thing to do is to not talk about it, is to just kind of hold it in and let it burn a little bit. Maybe talk to your inner circle about it. And the one thing I know about when you're talking to your people, they probably have your they're not looking at the business and the partnership. And so, ignoring it's so dangerous, but it is easy. It's the easy route of, I'm not going to have that difficult conversation. I'm just going to either vent internally about it and vent to somebody else about it. And that's where I can tell you from experience, it gets really, really dangerous, instead of facing it head on and saying, hey, there's something that, I'm feeling that I think it's really important that we talk about. And then also having your partner say, hey, if it's important to you, it's important to me. And, you tell me when, I'll make the time, I'll take the energy to do it. I want to listen to what you're saying and consider it and have those hard conversations. And as you both know, that goes two ways.
Yeah, one of the things that Todd and I have done over the 25 plus years we've been partners, it's kind of like a best practice, is we will, throughout the course of the day, because we're typically in the office together, we'll essentially interrupt each other, just kind of walk into the other person's office and sit down. And maybe we have something to talk about the business. Maybe we have something to talk about on a personal level, or maybe we don't have anything to talk about, and just create that little bit of an awkward silence that kind of encourages the other person to bring something up if there is something to bring up. And just kind of those spontaneous conversations just happen throughout the course of the day. And, now we're at a point where those little conflicts are not even conflicts anymore. We've just been together and working together for so long that it's just a natural thing. But putting yourself in a position with your partner where those kinds of small issues pop up and you think to yourself, it's no big deal, it'll just go away. It doesn't go away. And just putting yourself in a physical position and a place where those things can pop up is crucial to allowing you to address those issues.
Rip the Band-Aid off, right? And I don't know about any of you, I'd rather rip off a very small Band-Aid than a very large Band-Aid. The Band-Aids has to come off eventually. So, those little tiny ones when you're a kid, no problem at all. The big mama jamas that hit your arm hair, they're an issue. So just rip off the Band-Aid while it's small and have the conversation.
The more you let it go, the harder it is to rip off. So that first conversation might be a really hard conversation, but then wait and don't have it and then let something else happen and not have a conversation, let something else happen and not have a conversation. See how that fifth conversation, when you didn't have the first four, goes. It's going to be horrible. And that's what I experienced, it's in its lowest form was, I'm not dealing with that. All of a sudden it was just a tornado that was not good.
We've talked about this before, but, coming to these conversations with a mindset of trust and respect for your partner is crucial. What that really translates to is withholding judgment about what their position is. You want to come to these conversations with a sense of curiosity, with a sense of trying to understand their position. Even though it might not be what you think is the right thing to do or the best thing to do, but being able to have a conversation and try to get the partner to explain why they believe that or why they feel that way will help to get you through that conflict and address that conflict, but it will also help to build the partnership over time because you're not judging, you're being supportive of the partner. And that's really critical to, a critical part of the process in managing conflict.
So I know one of the things that you both have always talked about, you wrote in your book about, and there's so much to what you guys have done over so long that I admire and what I was drawn to, when I started looking into it a while back. But one of the things you guys talk about is doing things like going out to lunch together. And can you talk a little bit about that? Or maybe if you had a frustrated morning, what going out to lunch really did for you, more than just the exercise of going out and eating together?
It's a safe space for me to be 100% open and honest and talk about frustrations I might be having in the business, outside of the business, any issues we might be having. It allows you to kind of really, it's very cathartic for me. And there's times I just need to not be talking about work, and they'll know that. So I go in and be like, this is, let's talk about the game. What do you think? Did you see the playoff brackets, that type of stuff, to decompress where I might have been frustrated in the office, just changing the scenery and putting yourself in a public place. Even when we've had some uncomfortable conversations, we'll still do them there. We'll do them at one of our lunch spots. We're not afraid to. It really helps us kind of we know we have that time together, to talk about that or anything else. So lunch, amongst a dozen other reasons why I recommend doing it, really, we've created such a good cadence that I can, tell them, listen, man, this is actually freaking me out a little bit. I need some help here, or I'm completely frustrated or pissed, or, I think, are we still aligned? Are we unaligned? And how do we get back? So we talk about all that stuff very early and very frequently.
That's a silly little thing, but we don't have to think about where we're going because, on Mondays we're going this place and on Tuesdays we're going that place. And it's the same thing every week. So it just takes that whole stressor of like, okay, what do you want to eat today kind of thing off the table. And it sounds a little bit boring doing the same thing all the time, but it just makes it easy. And it just, allows us to be able to be open with whether it's conflict with the partner or whether it's a stress in the workload that we have or, something going on at home or whatever the case may be. It just gives us a space to be able to kind of share that stuff.
And these are quick hitters. They're not 2-hour lunches, like
4 minutes.
Steve and I are in and out. Sometimes we leave, eat, come back within a half hour. Like it could be that quick at times, but no less productive. Yeah.
That habit.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize until I started reading that part of your book and hearing you talk about it, the red flag. I've had so many great partners that I love going out to lunch with, and we didn't do it like you do it. And now I see that as a great thing that's built your partnership. But all my great business partners, I love going out to lunch with and all that stuff. Only now in hindsight, after reading it in your book and hearing you talk about it, that I realized that with my neighbor, I didn't want to go out to lunch with him. I mean, I didn't want to go out to lunch with him at all. He was not somebody that I wanted to go out to lunch with, and probably vice versa, I'm sure. It was just like that is not going to help me going out to lunch with him. And, what more of a big red flag, what bigger red flag could there be than that? And again, it's all only hindsight because there were checks on the desk. The money was hitting the account. It's just hindsight of having a partnership with somebody that even though the business is successful, I don't want to go out to lunch with them.
Money covers up a lot of problems.
Sure does.
For sure.
You gotta be careful of that.
Yep. So what kinds of things would you guys tell people like when they start to feel conflict for both of you? What kinds of things would you say, when you start to feel the conflict coming on and it starts to, what's the conversation starter? What does it look like to have those early hard conversations to you?
I try to look inward, and because I know me and I know some of the things that this brain got me in trouble with over the years. So I really try to look inward and be like, is this a me issue? Because a lot of times they are, I might just be projecting onto somebody else or, looking for a scapegoat because I don't want to own it. So I look inward all the time whenever there's a conflict. Be like, all right, Todd, are you being Todd of 25 years ago? Or are you being Todd of today? You know what I mean? Steven laughs because Steven knows. Although Steven is a conflict avoider, our yin and yang, I never back down from a fight. I loved it. Whether I knew you, didn't know you, whatever. I was very, very high conflict and not as much now as I used to be. Steven helped calm me down a lot. But
it was all you, bro.
I really look at myself before I get critical. And that might happen. You might still need to become critical. It might be something that the other person's doing or a situation that is not of your doing that you need to address. But coming at it from a inward mindset first before you get into that outward mindset.
Many more times than not, conflict is an emotional state. And so if you need to come to or if you need to have a conversation about something that's going on in the business or in the partnership, starting with, I feel this way, can't be refuted. You can't tell me I don't feel that way. But if I come to the conversation with, why did you do this? Now we have an argument, right? And so it's always about, like, what Todd's talking about is looking internally and trying to understand, how are you reacting to the situation? How am I reacting to the situation? And how does that make me feel? And if that's a problem, it's okay for me to come to my partner, to come to either of you guys and say, look, guys, I'm feeling a little bit stressed, or I'm feeling a little bit upset, or whatever the case may be. And this is why. Now we can have a conversation about that emotional state which will naturally lead into, okay, how do we fix this problem? How do we, whatever the business problem is or whatever the structural problem is, but coming at it from a sense of how I feel opens up the conversation to be much more vulnerable and much less defensive. And that's really the key, is to just kind of keep that defensiveness.
It could become very unmanageable, right? And people have come to us and said, well, what do you do when conflict's unmanageable? Well, you could either go the route that a lot of people do, just call your lawyers and that's that, or you could bring in a third-party mediator, which is really one of the reasons we started this company, because they aren't out there. Typically it becomes a legal battle, and Rob, better than most what the outcomes of that can be. A win is not a win. A win is still a loss. So we recognize, there's marriage counselors, there's personal therapists, but somebody that can come at it with a little bit of that, but with that business background that does not have an agenda to ring up billable hours. We just want to see people kind of work through the issue, bring it back down to a manageable level, and then continue to work on with their tools. But that's really one of the reasons why we created the Partnership Guys, was to help people in these types of situations.
Yeah, we're bringing out the all the important conversations that people have that are hard, that are very difficult to have. It's like I said, it's much easier to not have the conversation. And for me, I really appreciate you both and listening to you both. Your 25-year journey and things that you went through, ups, downs, how you're talking about things like conflict resolution. I've had great partnerships 30 plus years now and have the same thing. And like I said, it's only in hindsight that I see those red flags, and I wish there were these tools. And I knew you guys then when I was going through it, and what you guys have done together, because even just having your experience shares for how you worked through it would have been invaluable to me and my partner, and who knows what would have happened. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys sharing everything, and thanks everybody again for listening to the Partnership Guys podcast. This has been episode 5. And we are looking forward to doing plenty more in the future.
Thank and subscribe. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Please like and subscribe.
All right. Yeah. Good conversation, guys. Thank you.
Always.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, fellas.
Bye-bye.